And this lecture will focus on the numeric functions. And we are going to focus only on 4 of the functions. The round function is used to round numeric fields to a stated precision. The syntax requires 2 arguments. Now this graphic here, a little too small to see. I'm going to go to the next slide. You'll see a larger version of it. But you can view this particular graphic on page 345. The round function requires 2 arguments. The first argument being the data to process, and then the second argument, the precision to which we're going to round the data. Now the second argument represents the position of the digit to which the data should be rounded. If this value is a positive number, like we see in this example here, the 1, the function refers to the right side of the decimal. So it will be rounded to the right side of the decimal. However, if the value is negative, like we see in the third example, then the rounding is to the left side of the decimal position. Let's look at the actual data. The select statement selects the title, the retail, and this is what we're going to focus on. The actual data in the retail field. Notice the 30.95, I'm going to come down to the 54.5. That's the retail cost, is what that represents. The 28.75, and so on. The third display column is the round function with a precision of 1. Remember that it's positive, so it rounds the data to the right side of the decimal point. So in this example here, round the retail data to a position of 1, then the 54.5 gets rounded to 1. That stays at 54.5. But look at the 28.75. The 28.75 gets rounded to 1 to the right of the decimal, so it gets rounded to 28.8. Let's look up at the very first record. The 30.95 gets rounded actually to 31.0, but it doesn't show the 0 here. It just shows the 31. The second example of using the round function uses a second argument of 0. The 0 indicates that the retail price should be rounded to no decimal places. So we take that 30.95, it gives us a 31. Well, that looks like the same thing here. But if we go down further, we see this example of 54.5 gets rounded to no decimal places. It means it gets rounded to 55. And then the third example, which uses that -1 as the second argument. Remember, the negative means to round to the left side of the decimal place. So our 75.95 rounds to 80. 31.95 rounds to 30. Okay, so depending on the argument you use, the data can be rounded to the right of the decimal place or to the left of the decimal place, and how many values or how many column values it will round to. The TRUNC function is used to truncate a number. Again, the TRUNC function requires 2 arguments. The first argument being the data. The second argument represents the position of the digit where the data should be truncated. Just like the round function, the second argument for the TRUNC function, if it's positive, it truncates to a position to the right of the decimal, and if it's negative, it truncates to a position to the left of the decimal. Let's look at the third column of results. That's this TRUNC retail to 1 position to the right of the decimal point. Again, the positive number is to the right of the decimal point. So the retail value, which was originally 30.95, instead of rounding up at 5 and above, it simply truncates. You could argue that truncating means to always round down. That might be an argument. Again, I have to confess my mathematic ignorance to say I don't know if that's always true or not. But truncate simply cuts it off. Here we would have had If you actually look at the table, I don't have the full graphic here. The full graphic is on page 346. You would see better examples than what we see here in this graphic. The second example, or the fourth column of a display, is the 0. So it simply says truncate, show no decimal values. And then the third example truncates to the left of the decimal place. So the 30.95 becomes a 30, the 22 becomes a 20. And look at this, the 59.95 becomes a 50, and the 19.95 becomes a 10. So again, there's that. What seems to be happening is just always rounding down. But to truncate basically means to cut off. In this example, it's cutting off the values in the ones column. Again, a full image with more data is on page 346. The mod function, or modulus function, is used to return the remainder of a division problem. This example here simply tries to show you if you take the value 235 divided by 16, what results do you get? Well, you get 14.6875. This second select clause is going to show you what happens if you do the TRUNC function and then the mod function. The mod function is going to show you the remainder of the division problem. So the mod function takes two arguments. The first argument is the value, then the 16 is what we're going to divide by. So 235 divided by 16, what's the remaining value? And the remaining value is what's returned by the mod. So this example is trying to show you that if you divide 235 ounces, I think that's what they're trying to represent, by 16 ounces in a pound, you're going to get 235 ounces is the equivalent of 14 pounds and 11 ounces. So again, the mod function simply returns the remainder of a division problem. Although this example might seem somewhat complicated, the abs function is fairly simplistic. It simply returns the absolute value of a numeric value. This example is simply saying, using the abs function, it nests the round function in it. The pub date minus the sys date, they're looking for a number of days. And the number of days in this particular expression equates to a negative 144 or 1044. The abs function simply gives us the absolute or positive value of that data.